right, so if you've never seen anything with Active Directory before, this may be something of significant interest to you. So what we do typically So with identity and access management, this is probably one of the most important things of the week. Not just this week, but of the entire boot camp. If you start, and I think we started off with the Amazing Cyberman the other day. Well, with anybody who comes on board, let's just call this an employee who starts, what we will do with the employee is we will provision, quote unquote, the employee's account. So we provision these employees' accounts when they start with us with what is typically called the principle of least privilege. This is domain. The principle of least privilege. So intuitively, Trenton, what do you think principle of least privilege is? Intuitively. Okay. Yeah, and I always say, just so people remember it, you have not because you ask not. And if you know what that means, then you know what that means. All right, so you have not because you ask not, and just because you ask me, don't mean I'm going to give it to you. Right? If I'm the IT security administrator for a company, you can ask all you want, but unless somebody approves it, then it's very likely that you won't get access to something. So we can define attributes like an identity, and we can give that identity what is called role-based access control, discretionary access control, and mandatory access. So we can assign the identity either nothing, or we can decompose and put a little bit of what are they authorized to do. Exactly. So what you will see on the exam, very likely, is role-based access control. You'll see discretionary access control. Also see the principle of least privilege. Very likely that you'll see the word provision on there. And when we ended it last, I asked you to go and look up a couple things, and one of them was SAML, and another was SPML. Right. So if you take a look at these two. That's what I'm going to call them. I'm going to call these formats. What we can do is we can either automatically allow somebody to sign in using SAML, or we can automatically provision somebody's account using SPML. makes sense, then it doesn't make sense. But after you are part of the realm of trust, remember I keep mentioning that? If you're probably getting paid a lot of money, I'm just going to throw that out there, because how many of you know what exactly a SPML request does? I mean, so here's the deal, right? It takes a special kind of person to be able to integrate this this markup language into Active Directory. Automatically go through, and in this case right here, I don't know what's going on with the photo, but you can see it underneath here. It says add user. So this is a SPML request for add user. And I want to show you here, let's say that each one of you that are out there are in my realm of trust. Okay? You guys have been coming here in person for the past 6 nights. You say, you know what, Ben, I need to stay a little bit extra. I say, okay, here's the keys, go lock up. You're in my realm of trust. Right? So I trust you as far as I can throw you. Well, what we would typically see is at that point we make a determination. Just because I trust you, do I need to literally give you keys to the kingdom? No. No. I want to practice the principle of least privilege. But if I do trust you and I want to try to proxy work away from me having to do something, so if I own the keys to the kingdom are in Active Directory. If you want to go and interact with Active Directory, which we're going to talk a little bit more detail here, there's 2 ways that you can interact with it programmatically. And then there's another language that gives you direct access to the services, which is LDAP. So with this one right here, if we just scroll down, this doesn't have to be, we don't have to make this weird, because all this crap up top really means nothing. But you keep scrolling down here, and since this is I'm sure that it says in here, the add user, if we just look at the top, we look at the SPML, it's a SPML 2.0 right here. I'm just looking at the top piece of XML right here, the top value, and then boom, add requests. So if you want to add a permission or a privilege to, if you were requesting to add it to someone's account, instead of you calling me up and saying, hey Ben, I need you to add this person to the directory, what you can do, if I let you, is you can programmatically send a SPML request to me via command line or via an app if you want to create one. But you send the request to me, and then once you send the request to me, if you're authorized to do the transaction, like add a new user, it'll let you add a new user. But there's one rule. You have to follow the schema of what's submitted here. And in this particular case here, in order to interface with Oracle, this is Oracle's website, in order to interface with Oracle Identity Management Server or anything dealing with Oracle databases, you can send a SPML request over to it to add different privileges to that user's object within Active Directory. So that's the first thing. Okay, that's the first thing that I want to just kind of bring up. The second thing is before you do that, what you got to do is first you got to make a connection, or you have to make a connection to authenticate yourself. Right? So before you can actually create, modify, delete, the CRUD operands typically, before you can do that, first you have to send over something to authenticate you. And in this particular case, that's a SAML request, service assertion markup language. And typically these will have some sort of key in this. Look at this right here. So it'll have a unique key from the person that's trying to authenticate. And that's a key that if I'm the Active Directory, if I'm literally holding the keys to the kingdom, I give you a key. That is now a shared key between us. It's just between us. So now, if I see that key knocking at my front door, right, I know that that key belongs to whoever it belongs to. And there's a tie back to that, right? And so, if I trust that person, you make that authentication request, I immediately say 1. I give you a 1 back, right? Boolean value. 1 means come on in. 0 would mean go fish. Right? So you send over the SAML request first to assert that, hey, it's me, and I'm fixing to do something. It's basically like you're setting the table. Boom, I just authenticated to you. Now that I'm authenticated to you, I use what right behind it? SPML, right? So right behind it, I'd come with SPML. I'd do a SAML request saying, yo, I'm fixing to do something. I'm setting the table, getting ready to eat. And then right after that, I shoot off the SPML request. And if I'm authorized to do not only authentication, but then to also provision, then a transaction happens between a remote application and the entity that's in control. And that's what's important here. That's what's important here about basic identity management, is sending over the way that we can authenticate, but also sending over an assertion that we're making, hey, we're getting ready to make we're getting ready to have an operation happen, and then after that, you immediately say, hey, it's me again, here's what I need to actually happen, which is kind of neat.